Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of BAF, Bias in African Fashion PERMUTE. We are so happy to have you here with us today, and we're excited for the speaker that we have joining us today, Teleica Kirkland of CIAD UK. But before we bring her on, we just want to introduce again our platform and the series that we're having today. So Bias in African Fashion is a platform dedicated to driving inclusivity in the fashion space in Africa. With so much happening globally with regards to racial equity, we thought it was also appropriate that we look within our own systems to understand how we're doing in terms of making sure our sector is inclusive and provides space for everyone to participate. I'm one of the co-founders. My name is Udochi. I'm going to hand it off now to my other co-founder, Papa Yoyemi.
Hi everyone, my name is Papa Yoyemi, and I'm a fashion designer and the co-founder of Bias in African Fashion, which we sort of started because we think it's the right time for us to have a platform where people can actually come together and discuss issues that matters to us, issues that can actually bring about change within the African fashion sector. So with my dear Udechi, we started this like a while ago, and this is going to be our second episode of PERMUTE, which is really exciting.
Great. And for this edition, as I mentioned, we're joined by Teleica Kirkland, who is the founder and creative director of CIAD UK, which is the Costume Institute of the African Diaspora. And before we bring her on, I'm just going to read quickly her bio, just so that we can get a sense of her work and where she's coming from as we introduce her. So Teleica Kirkland is a fashion historian, associate lecturer in cultural and historical studies at London College of Fashion, and a PhD candidate at Goldsmiths University. She's also the founder and creative director of the Costume Institute of the African Diaspora, an organization dedicated to researching the history and culture of dress and adornment from the African diaspora. As an academic, she has traveled extensively, establishing links with researchers, custodians, and practitioners across the globe. In August 2014, Teleica curated Tartan, its journey through the African diaspora, CIAD's first major project. In May 2018, Teleica chaired CIAD's first international dress conference entitled CYA, Sartorial Representations of the African Diaspora. I hope I said that right. You can correct me. Come on. 4 times a year, CIAD hosts a research hub called the CIAD Exchange, where researchers in the field of African diaspora dress studies are able to present their work in front of an audience. And with that, we're going to bring on Teleica. Thank you so much for being here today.
That's okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're just gonna jump right into it. You can just tell us a bit about the work that you're doing right now in CIAD, and just what really prompted you to want to start the organization.
Okay, so first of all, the acronym is pronounced CIAD, and the reason why I started it is because I couldn't find critical investigative information about dress engagement from Africa and the African diaspora. All the books that I'm finding on fashion, dress, clothing, adornment, fabric, everything is very Eurocentric and very much based on a Eurocentric model of how people have engaged with clothing. And I had questions about how people of African heritage, how African people had engaged with clothing, particularly as we've moved across the continents, either through forced immigration or whether that's through work or just the desire to move. How have we sought to establish and re-establish ourselves through our practices? And I couldn't find any literature on that. I was like, where are the books? who's talking about it? So you know, and I spent about 3 months researching in American universities, because I was like, if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be in the United States, right?
Yeah.
The United States is going to have information on African diaspora dress and who's doing what where, and I couldn't find anything. I found a professor at the University of Indiana who was looking at Egyptian jewelry. I found someone in North Carolina. There was a module of course in North Carolina that was talking about sub-Saharan something or other, but there was just nothing. I was like, how can there be nothing? So basically that's why I started the organization, because I wanted to be able to have these discussions and get stuff written about dress engagement, fabric, clothing, adornment, all of those things, which are so integral to us as people of African heritage, and what those things mean to us and the greater implications of those things.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I think it's not just fashion. I mean, I think just generally in terms of like history, there hasn't been a great job done in terms of kind of telling our part of history and just recording our voices, recording our stories.
Absolutely.
So I think definitely, I think it's great that you wanted to start this. And I don't think most people think about it in that way, in terms of kind of looking at fashion from that kind of academic perspective and wanting to kind of delve deep from like a historical perspective. What was it that made you, did you have like interest previously like in history, or was it just in fashion? What made you kind of think in that way, do you think?
So all of my mothers, my mum, my grandmother, my great grandmother, my great aunt, all of my female line made clothes. My family is from the Caribbean. My family are Jamaican, and everyone makes clothes, right? And so my mum's clothes, my mum made my clothes, I make clothes, and so it was just one of those things that, you know, there's always a sewing machine, there's always fabric, there's always you know, and so it's just something that I grew up with. But I think what happened is I was a fashion designer ages ago, and I realized doing fashion design that I didn't enjoy fashion design, because even though I really desperately wanted to be a fashion designer when I was younger, people don't want to pay for clothes. And I'm sure, Papa, you deal with this all the time. You know, where people want you to make them the most exquisite things and then they don't want to pay for it, right? Or they want it done within 2 hours, and it's like, no, that's not going to be a 2-hour outfit you're asking for. So I also then got into carnival costumes and making carnival costumes. And I wanted to, as I'm in it's called playing mass when you make carnival costumes, Caribbean costumes. And I was a mass player for about 5 years, making massive, really huge floor pieces and helping young people make smaller costumes for themselves to dance Notting Hill Carnival. And as I started to ask questions and develop themes for Carnival, it sort of led me on to wanting to know more about this particular history about this. And, you know, I don't want to misrepresent whatever particular African society or community we're supposed to be representing for this year's Carnival. So let me ask more questions. Let me try and do a bit of research. And so I started to go into the history of Carnival, which took me around the Caribbean for 2 years. I visited about 13 different countries. And started to ask questions, and realized from asking questions there that nobody had asked those kinds of questions before, because they didn't know either. You know, they didn't have the information. And so that kind of led me on to being like, okay, well, there are more questions to ask. And as you start asking a question and someone gives you a little bit of information, then it leads on to 500,000 other things that
that's true. That's true.
Scab, and then there's more and more and more and more, right? And I think that I got to a point in myself where I didn't have enough knowledge to know what it was that I needed to ask I knew there was something I needed to know, but I didn't have that knowledge enough in myself, which meant that I had to go and do a master's, another bit of higher learning to understand what it was I didn't understand. I knew there was something, but I don't know what it was. So I did my master's course and was like, okay, so there's levels of criticality that we need to, all different things about who we are as people, what that means to us, how we identify ourselves, what our identity means. You know, it's so deep. It's so very deep, and it goes on and on. So yeah.
That's actually very interesting. So, what do you think the aim for you will be in the next 5 years?
I mean, I think one of our constant aims is to become better known, is to let people know that we're here. Because one of the things that was really prevalent from our first conference was bringing different people together across the diaspora. And that's one of the things that that's like one of our permanent aims that we really want to do, is bring people together from Africa, from South America, from North America, from Europe, from the Caribbean, from the Indian Ocean. Let's not forget those people over in Mauritius and the Seychelles. They're over there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Together, and to be able to have these moments where we come together and we're able to talk about who we are and what it's about and what kind of similarities and differences we have. So that's definitely one of our constant aims, to keep the conversation going, right? And to be, I think, pioneers of this type of thing. Saying pioneer makes it sound really lofty and a bit big-headed.
You are.
I don't mean to sound sort of big-headed about it though, but I just I want it to be one of those things where people, they see the acronym CIAD and they're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Yeah, I know who they are. Yeah. And, you know, people are able to say, oh, you know, I'm doing this bit of work, or I'm writing about this thing, you know, can I publish this article with you? Because that's another thing you were asking. One of our aims definitely for the next 5 years is to engage people from the diaspora, including the continent, in writing about their practices. So we can get that writing out there and people will see and know it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be something where we have to rely on Europeans to go and find the knowledge. We've got the knowledge.
No, yes, we do.
Ourselves, you know.
We do. So tell us about the program, some of the programs that you've started, that you have from inception of the project.
Okay, so one of the first things that we did, because you know, you start in Costume Institute is all very good and well in theory. In practice, it's this monumental thing that I was like, oh my God, I didn't know it's going to be so onerous. So really, you start this thing and you don't know what the hell you're doing, but you're just trying something. Yeah. So one of the first things we did is set up a platform where every season, every 3 months, every 3 months, we have a platform where people make it available for people to deliver their research, or if they're doing a particular piece of artwork or a particular line they're just producing, when their fashion, everything is about clothing and dress, fashion. So we give that platform to people so they can tell the audience what it is they're doing, where we can find them and who they are and what they're about. So that was one of the first things we did, kind of open that up to people to let them know, you know, this is somewhere you can talk about your work and what you're doing.
Which is very interesting, which is very important. Yeah. Which is actually very important.
So that's called the CIAD Exchange, because it's supposed to basically be an exchange of ideas. You know, some people just come and they come with an idea. I'm thinking of making a line about this, or I'm thinking of writing about this, and this is where I've got so far in my research, and they come and they talk about that. This year, before everything closed down, we were using the platform for to show films, to show fashion films based around the African diaspora, so that again, it was one of those things of sharing knowledge. There was the film that I mean, obviously Corona put everything down, but one of the next films that we were going to show was going to be about wax print cloth. And the lady who'd made the film, she's a British Nigerian, and she had traveled through Nigeria and I think Ghana and some other places in West Africa, finding out about wax print and talking about talking to merchants on the street and in markets, and they're looking at things like what they're called Vlisco, right? And how Vlisco have kind of like capitalized on like wax print market, you know, and what that means for the producers of this in local communities. So that was that was going to be the film that we showed in spring, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. So we're hoping that we can do that at the next conference. And then the conference is the first conference we held in 2018. Like I said, it was a moment to bring everyone together, and it was fantastic. It was, I'm just gonna like big myself up a minute, right? Because it was so good. It was so good. I mean, we had a lady.
Do you guys have recordings of the conference that we can maybe?
I mean, we've got little we've got recordings that we're still trying to put together in a cohesive way, because we don't want to have like there was a whole day of conference, right? So we're trying to sort of like do little snippets of the conference that we're going to run in the next few months. And in the lead up to what I hope will be the next conference next year. A lady that was in London just because she was visiting with her husband, and she was supposed to be going home the day before the conference, and she stayed an extra 2 days just so she could come to the conference. She was we had food. I mean, it was one of these things, right, where I don't know if you've ever been to an academic conference, but they tend to be really dry, right?
Yeah.
Very old, dry, you know, you might get some stale sandwiches and a stale bit of salad. But we put catering on, we had African and Caribbean food, we had drumming, we had everything. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. Wow.
Why wasn't I invited?
Yes, come to the next one. Come to the next one. So that's something that we're ongoing with doing as well. And then our last thing that I really wanted to mention was that, again, and this has been put off by various things, not just the pandemic, but funding and whatever. Every time we get it up and going, something happens. We've got the funding and then the pandemic happened. But we're trying to do the first cultural exchange between the UK and the Caribbean, where we're taking 10 students from the UK over to the Bahamas to learn about straw plaiting and to use straw plaiting in the development, or to get together with 10 students over there to develop enterprises where they use straw plaiting in the development of accessories and things like that, and how they use their own fashion knowledge to develop things like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Really?
I wanted to actually go back to something you said previously. You mentioned that you had to go back, or you felt the need to go back and get your master's just so you can kind of shore up your skills. The people that contribute to your work, do you feel like they need to have advanced degrees, or do you find that people who maybe just have undergraduate degrees are also contributing? And then secondly, you mentioned the exchange. My thought was that there wasn't really anybody who was kind of looking at fashion or dress from the African diaspora in this kind of academic way, but it seems like there were people previously, but now you're just kind of bringing them together. Is that a right assessment of it? Okay,
so the first question, I don't necessarily feel like people need to have an advanced degree to write for the site, but to be able to, there's a certain level of thinking, or there's a certain way of thinking to be able to be critical about your own work and to be able to get other people, because essentially what we want is for that work that we feature on the site to be referenceable, right? Exactly. My students, I have around about 150 to 200 students a year, and I always send them to the site, you know, because they're always asking about clothes from Africa or the African diaspora, or where can I find out this information? And you know, we don't have very many articles on the site at the moment because we need more engagement with people to come to more writing. And so it's kind of, they don't need to have the advanced degrees, but they certainly need to have a certain way of thinking about the work, which means being able to be critical and being able to look at it from a certain perspective. So it's not just sort of anybody who would be buying and selling clothes. It's really people who understand how important clothing is. It's much more than just covering your skin and keeping yourself cool or warm or wearing something that's fancy. It's really about who you are and why and what that means and how that represents you and how that signifies you as a person in the world, right? I mean, at the moment, I'm just halfway through my PhD, and I'm talking about how women, post-war women from the Caribbean, use their clothing as a way of trying to mitigate against the negative perception of their blackness, right? So trying to use their clothes in a kind of respectable politics type of way. You know, black, but look at me dressed so smart. So, you know, maybe you can see my clothing and not see my black skin, right? So this respectability politics turns up in hoodies. You know, I remember there was a congressman, there was a black congressman who was in the Senate, and he had a hoodie on and he got removed because he shouldn't have had a hoodie on, and he was making a protest about Trayvon Martin, right? So this whole thing about hoodies and whether a hoodie is a thuggish item of clothing, and you know, if black people didn't sag their trousers or sag their jeans and didn't wear certain items of clothing, then we wouldn't be seen as being threatening, which is complete nonsense, right? So it's all of it's being able to understand dress from that perspective. That's kind of what we're looking for. That doesn't take an advanced degree, but it definitely takes a certain way of thinking. And to your second question about the platform, there's people out there doing things, right? But because we're all so desperate all over the place, then how do I know? Like, until the conference, literally, I started this organization because I needed something, and I thought, well, if I need it, there must be other people in the world who also need it. And and I sent the call out for conference papers, not knowing that there'd be anyone else out there who was able to call back. But yet, loads of people were like, "Oh my God, we've never seen a conference about African before." So I was like, "Okay, so right, so it's something. People are interested. Okay, that lets you know that people are out there." But I don't know of any platforms where people can come and speak. And I think, you know, with everything happening online now, you know, we're on a Zoom call right now, then I think these kind of opens up the ways of being for other people to be able to speak on these platforms, because before it was very much people who were in the country or passing through the country or something like that. Another way of being able to engage people across the world, right, through platforms like this.
So I wanted to ask that, out of all the programs that you run under the organization, which one do you think has had the most impact?
Definitely the conference.
The conference.
Yeah, definitely the conference, because the Kayad Exchange, which is the platform, that has impact, but because the people who come to, or the people who have engaged so far in that platform tend to be UK based, or at the very least they're UK based, and then they might be going back to Africa or something like that, right? They might come from Nigeria or Ghana or Gambia or somewhere, but they're mostly UK based, and they tend to be largely students. So that information, then it kind of stays with them. But the conference, geez, I mean, we've had people emailing us about the conference from all over the world, right? And that was 2 years ago. So that kind of lets me know, okay, that was something that we just sort of tried, let's see if it works. And it clearly did. So it lets me know, okay, this is really important, that we've got to keep it going. Come hook or by crook, we've got to keep it going.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, you know, everything happening around the world in regards to in what ways do you think, what are your thoughts on on in particular with the fashion industry regarding inclusion and diversity. What with the entire thing happening all around now that we're hearing this year, this that every other day on the news, we're getting updates that are not so cool or not so happy kind of updates. Yeah. So what do you think?
I think that diversity in fashion is long overdue, right? First of all, I think some of the big European fashion houses, their problem is that they have been so monocultural, meaning focused on themselves and only themselves, and really viewing the rest of the world as their dressing up box, right? Mm-hmm. So using the rest of the world as their toolkit for creativity. I mean, I had an interview with a magazine last week from Paris, and some of the questions they were asking, questions like, well, you know, it was about cultural appropriation, and he was saying things like, well, if European designers, if Western designers aren't allowed to go around the world anymore and, you know, seek out other cultures to use in their designs, then does that mean fashion creativity will cease to exist? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Honestly, I was so offended by that question. Like, what are you, the rest of the world doesn't exist just so Europeans can dip in and out and use it, you know, their accessories and designs when they feel like it. No. I think that Western designers, because it's largely Western designers that are the main offenders in doing these things in terms of lack of diversity, they need to start including other people in their boardrooms, right? It shouldn't be that difficult. There are Black people and people of color live everywhere, right? They're all over the world. Like, stop being monocultural. And of course, you know, I know that sometimes it can go the other way, where we have, there's a Nigerian designer whose name's completely escaped me right now, but I know that he's used his traditional fabrics and used, but the style is Western clothes. Now, the thing is, it's not necessarily what's his name?
Is it anyway, I don't know. Never mind.
Possibly. The thing is that because of the supremacy of Western culture, right, over the whole of the globe, then I don't see that designers from other areas that are using Western styles is seen as the same way as Westerners who are then picking up material culture and patterns or styles or whatever from non-Western designers and using in their aesthetic as the same thing. I don't see it as the same thing at all. Because essentially, designers from the non-Western designers want to sell. And if you want to sell to the largest buying market, then the largest buying market tends to align with Western styles or Westernized styles. Until we get greater education, and this goes to your question, Papa, on what things need to change, but until we get a greater education within fashion in itself, then we're going to be following Western styles and Western designs, right? So I definitely think there needs to be more inclusion in the boardrooms. There needs to be a greater understanding within fashion education. There needs to be just a greater understanding across the board as to how important dress and identity is when it comes to fashion and things like that. So yeah, I get so tired of the Gucci's and the Pradas and people like that. Like, come on.
So I was gonna ask, so how would you guys like at Kayad, I think I said that right this time.
Yes.
How would you like to contribute to this dialogue that's happening right now? What would you, in the ideal world, what would you like your impact to be, or contribution to be to the discourse that's happening?
Well, I think first of all, I want the impact to be bringing in designers who are not really spoken about. So we're talking about Africa and the African diaspora. I think that you mentioned, Udochi, at the beginning about, you know, Africa not being left out, but actually I don't think is left out. I think Africa is doing a great job at showing its own designers and showcasing its own designers. You know, I know a lot of designers from Nigeria and Ghana and South Africa, and I know these are places where, and Tanzania as well, and I know these are places where they tend to have a lot of promotion, you know, when we're talking about 54 countries across the continent of Africa.
Of course.
I think that, you know, the conversation in African fashion is happening. What's not happening is the conversation around African diaspora within South America or Central America or the Indian Ocean, or, you know, the Mauritius or the Seychelles or even the Caribbean. That conversation is not happening as much. And so I'd like our contribution to be bringing those conversations together and providing something where people can be heard, right?
That's great. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So in terms of I think the audience are probably mostly engaging with this conversation as we post it. Will probably be people on the African continent. How can they be a part of what you're doing? How can they contribute to the work that Kayad is?
That's a great question. Right. So at the moment, we're just talking about putting out the drive to get people to write in for us, right? So at the moment, we're looking for article writers to get some content onto the site to write about fashion, engagement, dress, clothing, adornment, all of those things, identity, representation, all of those things from their perspectives, right? Because that's one of, as Papa was saying, that's one of our main remits, is to bring this information together. And it's great to have platforms like this that go out, you know, to wide audiences so that people can know, oh, actually, if I've got an idea about writing something, then at least I can email these people and say, okay, I'm thinking about writing about this. You know, what's the remit do you need for me to send an article in? I'd love that. Yeah, so.
Great. Papa, anything?
I just would like to know opportunities, areas in within African fashion segment, and what do you think we need to do better in our continent to be able to amplify all the things that you yourself said that we have going on right now, and also how do you think we can actually not make it more inclusive, that it's not the same set of people? Like, for example, you were able to mention just one fashion designer that you think that is using local Nigerian textile and making them into, but which I think that there are a whole lot of other designers in Nigeria that are using those kind of textiles, but it's just the same people that we know, that we keep knowing. So to make this more inclusive, what are your suggestions for that?
I was just trying to find the name of that fashion designer because it was bugging me that I couldn't remember his name. Okay, so I think one of the things that we need to do to make things better is, and this is difficult considering the history of the continent and how it's been cut up through colonization and how we're still sort of finding ourselves after that, right? I do think there needs to be a shedding of Western aesthetics, right? A shedding of Western aesthetics, a shedding of a belief that Westernization is where, what's the word, where decency and where the best is, right? We need that we are the best, right? That we already had it before they came. We've got it after. Our stuff is popping, yeah, and we need to recognize that, but also we need to share that with each other, so we can stay in our different communities in Nigeria. We can't just stay in our different communities in Congo or wherever. We have to be able to share that across the diaspora, and we have to be able to recognize that, and it's again, because of the history of what's happened to us for so many centuries, I think it's difficult sometimes for the relationships to form, because what I'm talking about here is relationships through fashion, right? The relationships need to be able to form for trust to be able to be developed. And once you then have trust, then you have care. And once you then have care, then you have interest and all of those things. So we need to start developing those relationships from Africa through to South America, through to the Caribbean, you know, across the, don't forget the Seychelles and Mauritius, never forgetting them, right? Across the diaspora, to sort of say, look, you know, we can come together and talk and have these conversations. And so that's one of the things that need to change. The shedding of Western ideology needs to change. I'm going to say this because I know this is a big thing. Colorism. Ooh, listen. Yeah. Listen, this is one of the lectures that I give is about colorism, right? Yes. And it's so interesting that, you know, talking to white people about colorism and how colorism turns up in Asian cultures and African cultures, and there's something we need to stop doing. We've got to stop it. We've got to stop it. Like, you know what? We are blessed with melanin in several hundred different shades and different variations, and we need to be pleased with that. We need to be happy with that and stop trying to align ourselves with a lighter, brighter ideology. You know, we've got to stop it. Whatever our hair is, then our hair is beautiful, however it is. All of those we need to embrace. And but again, I'm acknowledging the difficulty because of our history. So it's really about working through those things, you know, those are things that need to change, definitely.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So I guess we're gonna give you a chance as we wrap up to add any final thoughts. And as you add the thoughts, also just let people know how they can get in contact with Kayad and also yourself if they want to submit articles or to just learn more about what you're doing.
Or the organization.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. Great. I'm sorry if I spoke too much. I do tend to talk a lot. I'm sorry.
It's fine. I mean, this is fun.
It's really great to connect with people across the diaspora. Listen, Adochi being in New York and Papa being in Nigeria, it's so brilliant. This is absolutely exactly what I want, you know, for these conversations across the diaspora to happen. And I think we need to have more of this. Right, there needs to be more of this dialogue, and more of these sort of platforms for us to talk. So I'm really grateful for this. And like I said, don't forget to send me the link when you guys publish it. So I will definitely share it with everyone. And look, our platforms are, we're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and what's the other one? I think Tumblr as well. I don't even know if anyone uses Tumblr, but we're Kayad UK. CIAD UK on all platforms, all social media platforms. And then if somebody wants to email me or email us and send in ideas for articles, they can get in touch with us at info@ciad.org.uk. So that's info@ciad.org.uk.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Teleica. This has been a great conversation. So informative. We look forward to staying in touch. Yeah.
All right.
Engaging you more. All right. That's all the best. Yeah.
And thank you so much. Thank you for making me laugh.
I try my best.
And thank you to everyone for joining us today. As has been said, this is going to be available on our Instagram page, and as well on a number of other media platforms. We'll make those available to you as we post them. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to having you for our next series or next session in this series of PERMUTE by BAF. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.